Most leaders are lopsided. Some leaders lead almost entirely with their heart. They care deeply, they want to protect their people, and they want to be liked. Others lead almost entirely with their brain. They live in spreadsheets, policies, and logic. Both of these leadership groups mean well, but if you lean too much to either side, then you're gonna lose. If you want to be a truly effective, well-rounded leader, then you need to have a 50-50 relationship with your heart and with your brain, because it takes both of them to lead well. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. In this video, I want to walk you through why that balance matters, what heart really looks like in leadership, and what using your brain looks like in leadership. And then what happens if you overuse one and ignore the other. Then I'm going to give you a simple checklist that you can use on any decision you make, and it'll tell you and answer a simple question. Did I use my heart here, or did I use my brain here? And did I use them both equally? If you stick with me to the end, I guarantee that you're going to walk away with something that you can put to work immediately this week. Not just a motivational idea that you're going to forget tomorrow. If you're new here, I'm Joe, a U.S. Navy Command Master Chief who served for nearly 20 years in the U.S. military. The views expressed here, completely mine and mine alone. I spent nearly 20 years leading high-stress, high-demand teams, and more importantly, leading other leaders. These videos are built off of a backbone of experience, not just some guru magic like other YouTube channels. Every single week, I break down some of these tried and true leadership methods, and I drop a video every single Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. If this sounds like something you need more of in your life, then consider subscribing to my channel so you never miss a lesson. All right, let's dive into today's episode about the heart versus the brain and why you should be using both. Let me start off by describing and breaking down what I mean when I say lead with your heart and what I mean when I say lead with your brain. Leading with your heart is about people. It's empathy, connection, and understanding. It's about paying attention to the emotional temperature of your team. It's about asking your team, how are you really doing? And then caring about their response. Leading with your brain, that's about reality. It's facts, it's data, it's the constraints, it's all of those second order analytical effects. It's about asking what's actually happening here? What do the numbers say? What are the risks? Let's start with the heart side. If you're ignoring emotions, you're ignoring data that you need as a leader. Your people, they're out there, they're walking around with those doubts, those fears, family problems, stressors, all those things happening that involve the heart side. If you don't stop to see those things, then you're leading in a fantasy. Heart leadership says, I see you. I see the person, the human behind the rank, behind the title, behind that job description. That leadership builds trust. That has your people bringing you problems early. That's what makes them tell you, hey, this plan is not going to work. Here's what we're seeing at the deck plate or at the ground level. The truth is, people won't give that kind of honesty to a leader who doesn't lead with their heart or doesn't have a heart. Great leaders don't just choose one of them. They learn how to balance both. I've seen this hundreds of times over my 20 years of leadership. Walking the deck plate, talking to sailors, and I see one and I can tell if something is wrong just by the way that they respond and the way they say good morning. And then I can interact with that person and see how they're truly doing. Or I can start to see performance slipping or somebody who's not performing as well as they used to. I could just go after those numbers. But instead, I sit them down and I say, what's going on? How can I help you as a leader? And then I find out that there's something going on. And guess what? Once we remove that barrier from their personal life and help them solve it, their performance returns to a higher level than it was before. Because now they're bought into you, they're bought into the organization, and you've built that loyalty with that person. And that's huge. Heart leadership isn't about being soft, it's about being strategic. You're going to be removing real barriers that are stopping your team from winning. There's another huge advantage to heart leadership, and that's something that a lot of leaders don't know about and that they miss. And that's building psychological safety. Psychological safety means that your people can speak up without being afraid. They can admit those mistakes, raise their hand and say, hey, I don't understand, I need help. And they can also challenge ideas or the way an organization does something with respect. If you want innovation, if you want honest feedback, you have to build that culture with a purpose. And that is done through heart leadership. Heart is also where your values live. That integrity, that fairness, that loyalty, and that service. All of that thrives under heart leadership. Your heart is that voice that says, hey, just because the numbers say this is the right decision doesn't mean that it's the right decision. Now let's talk about the brain. There's a temptation to think, hey, as long as I care about my people, everything else will work itself out. That's not leadership, that's wishful thinking. Your brain is what's going to keep you honest about reality. You've got limited time, you've got limited energy, limited money, and limited manpower. and the mission still has to get done. There are real risks, rules, and consequences about all of these things that don't care about your feelings. Leading with your heart means looking at these constraints and being willing to say what can realistically be done in this situation. Here's what the data says, and here's what's going to break if we don't adjust. Here's the important part. The brain side isn't about being cold. It's about protecting your people with good, well-informed decisions. When you look at those numbers and see that your team is overwhelmed, you can fight for more resources as a leader. You can push back on unrealistic timelines. You can reassign work to spread out the workload. When you use the analytics and the reports and the details to make those decisions, you can stop making decisions that feel good today but bury your team tomorrow. So I'm not telling you to turn into a robot. I'm telling you to use your brain in service of your people, not instead of your people. Now let's take a look and talk about what happens and what it looks like when you get out of balance. Failure mode number 1 is all heart and no brain. This leader cares deeply about their people, but they avoid those hard conversations. They keep people in positions that they're not ready for at the detriment of their team because they don't want to hurt their feelings about moving them. They say yes to everything because they feel bad about saying no and they don't want to let anybody down. They make decisions about how they feel right now and they ignore those facts that are sitting right in front of their faces. The results, they're predictable. Performance starts to slow and erode. Standards start to get fuzzy. The best people on the team, they start to lose respect for that leader because they can see that the leader isn't willing to get in there and make those tough calls. I made this mistake before. I had an LPO or one of my frontline leaders who I wanted to succeed. I saw that they weren't a good fit for my team. The team efficiency went down. The team started failing. Standards started to erode, but I didn't want to move them because I knew that that would not feel good and that it may impact their career. I spent way too long putting off making a decision because I was spending too much time in my feelings and too much time with my heart. And I didn't look at the facts and use my brain and make a balanced decision. Next is failure mode number 2. This is the all brain and no heart. This leader is sharp. They understand the numbers. They can quote the policy. They know the technical aspects in and out, upside down. But every conversation feels like a performance review. Everything is metrics, charts, tasking, efficiency. There is no warmth. There's no true, genuine connection. They feel cold. If you've been led by these leaders, it can feel like they don't care about you, that you're just a number. People under this situation might comply, but they'll stop caring. They give the minimum, they keep their heads down, they don't bring new ideas to the table because nobody wants to get shot down by a robot. I once worked for a leader like this. They were absolutely brilliant. They knew the tactics, they knew the technical information, they knew all of those things, but they didn't ask how people were doing. They didn't care how they were doing. They never listened to their team. And people did what they were told, but that was it. And the climate, it was miserable. Most of us just felt like pawns on a chessboard that we were being maneuvered around to make that leader look good. In reality, they could have cared for us, but we never knew because they never talked to us or asked us. The leader never stopped to think about how the people were and not just the metrics and performance and the numbers. So that raises a serious question. How do you know if you're balanced? How do you know if you're using too much heart or too much brain? How do you know if you're bringing both your heart and your brain to the table when you're making decisions? I'm going to give you a simple 3-step check that you can use in any significant decision. I recommend you write this down, keep it in the front of your notebook, and keep it where you can see it so you actually use it. I'm going to break this down further, but here it is. Step 1 is the brain check. Step 2 is the heart check. Step 3, that's the integration phase. And that's it. Now let's break it down. Step 1, the brain check. Ask yourself this. What facts do I actually have? What do the numbers say? Am I making any assumptions? What are the second and third order effects if I make this decision? Or what are the second and third order effects if I don't make a decision? What are some hard constraints that I can't ignore? Don't rush this step. This is where you step away from your emotions and your heart and you start to think, what information and analytics and metrics do I have to back this decision in a sound manner? You want to be looking at reality here. For example, if the data shows that your team is overloaded, you don't get to just say, oh, they're fine because they aren't complaining. If the risk is high, you don't get to treat it as low just because you want that decision to work out. Step 2 is the heart check. Ask yourself these questions. Who will this decision affect the most? How will it affect them? How will this change what they're already carrying? Does this decision build or erode trust with the team or organization? Does this decision align with my personal leadership values or the values of my organization? If I were in their shoes, what would I need from my leader right now? The heart check doesn't mean that you change your decision every time somebody feels uncomfortable. It simply means that you're not blind to the human and the human cost. You still might have to make those hard calls, but now with a heart check, you can make that decision with empathy, compassion, trust, and support for your people instead of indifference. Step 3 is integration and communication. You take what you learn from the brain check and the heart check, and then you make the best decision that honors both the people and the mission. Then you communicate it that way. You talk to your people and say, here's what the constraints, and here's what the mission is, and here's why we have to do it. You can also say, here's what I know this means to you, and here's how I'm going to support you through this next event. When your people hear both, they still might disagree. They might still be frustrated, but they'll know that you didn't ignore the people and you didn't ignore reality. You used your head and you used your heart. Let's bring it all together now. If you want to be a well-rounded leader, you can't be all heart or all brain. You have to use each one 50-50 and with a purpose. All heart and no brain leads to chaos, low standards, and burnout. All brain and no heart leads to fear, resentment, and apathy. Great leadership is that 50-50 partnership. Heart keeps you human, brain keeps you effective. So here's my challenge for you. This week, pick one real decision that you're facing as a leader. Before you act and make a decision, run through the brain check and run through the heart check. Brain first, then heart, then you integrate them and make a decision. Do this over and over again, and little by little, you'll become the leader that your people trust to have their back and lead the mission effectively. If this helped you, tell me in the comments whether you're a heart first leader by default or a brain first leader by default and why you think you're that way. I want to read about it. This can help me shape future videos. And if you want to go deeper into the whole decision side of leadership, the next video I want you to watch is how to make tough decisions as a leader. In that video, I break down how leaders can make tough decisions quickly and be agile. You'll learn a lot and it doesn't take a lot of time. Check it out. I'm going to link it on screen so you can jump right into that video next, and the link is in the description. If you want practical, real-world leadership tools, you're in the right place. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't done so already. I'll see you next week with another video. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.